Hey everybody, Zach Nordike back with you for another episode of our Zero to a Million series. This is where we talk about how businesses can go from no revenue to $1 million in annual revenue. Again, had the great fortune of being a part of a company that's doing that as we speak. A lot of unique learnings on this journey. So for those of you that are on this pathway, I'm excited to share a little bit of what I've learned in my vantage point on a variety of topics that are absolutely critical to walking this path. So today's focus is going to be a high growth roadmap, the specific things that you'll need to do as a business operator or an entrepreneur if you really want to scale your business. And we're actually going to look at a very specific author's lens on taking this approach. It's actually not a 0 to a million focus, but really to if you're very ambitious, to apply some of these principles on this kind of part of the journey. But I think the guidance will go well beyond that $1 million mark in annual revenue if you so choose to take that pathway, which I can share is not for everybody. So excited to be talking about just a roadmap to get from kind of the baseline all the way up to $1 million. And for those of you that have the desire to go beyond that, to lay a solid foundation and groundwork to do it. My entrepreneur tip is be intentional and also be pretty self-aware. Okay. The 0 to $1 million in annual revenue pathway is one that's pretty essential if you want to create a business that can provide more than just maybe the income of a job, right? You have to be intentional and choose to do it. Once you get close or at the $1 million mark in terms of annual revenue, chances are you'll be able to, as a business operator, receive income that's larger than the pay you would receive from most jobs. And again, I'll underscore most jobs. But it's really key that we're intentional that we want this pathway. Not easy, requires a lot of learning, requires a lot of trial and error. So be intentional and also be self-aware that as you maybe start building your business, there may be a point where you do not want it to go past a certain level because maybe it's caused a lot of strain in terms of your availability for your family or other hobbies and interests you have outside of work. This journey can be all consuming. So be intentional, know where your limits are. And then once you've decided that it is your intention and you feel like it's not going to be beyond what your limits or personal expectations or personal boundaries are, really concentrate on thinking about roadmaps like the one that I'm going to share with you, because there's a lot of components that we don't maybe think through all the way at the beginning of doing something like this. So I'm not going to take credit for the framework of the 7 topics we're going to touch on today. That credit should go to David G. Thompson. He wrote a book called 7 Essentials of High Growth Companies. Okay. Some may look this up, and I'll certainly put a link to David's book in the description today, but some might look this up and it will say Blueprint to a Billion. Yes, for those that are hyper ambitious and want to take it not to just from the 0 to a million where we're focused today, but to a much higher level, wonderful. So don't think that I'm espousing that since I'm saying, hey, the journey from 0 in revenue to $1 million is tough. That's not what I'm aiming at, but what I'm strongly encouraging is that you think of a foundation for your business that will operate well past the $1 million mark if you so choose, and will also be really important to consider if that's kind of the upward bound of where you want to get to. So I think only preparing for what you want to get to is probably not the wisest bet, okay? Being prepared to lay a solid foundation and have the groundwork to go higher, in my mind and my experience, is more important. You want to have the option to go bigger if you want. And you also want to have the option to stay the same or maybe even reduce size if you want. having control is so important. I think the 7 essentials of high growth companies is a really good framework to think of that provides you with that optionality. So the first part that David Thompson's book addresses is you have to be going after a big market opportunity. Okay. I think that when we're thinking of big market opportunities, we think of like, hey, everybody needs heat to survive, or everybody needs the internet. That's really like a obviously huge market. Yeah, people want to stay warm when it's cold, or people want to stay cool when it's hot, or everybody needs the internet. Those are huge markets. But I think the thing when we're defining big market opportunity is that you find a niche that you're good at, that you have some type of advantage in, and it's big enough to yield what you're looking for. Let me just kind of explain why I think this big market opportunity doesn't need to be looked at in terms of like gargantuan commodity opportunity, but just to be very careful what you're aiming at, so it at least can likely get the returns you're looking for. If you want to build $1 million company and you say, hey, I'm really good at sewing, and I think I can sew these really unique things that I can sell at a farmer's market, and maybe I'll sell it also on Etsy online, right? That's a great thought process, okay, if that's your talent. I wish it were my talent. It's definitely not my talent. But I think what we have to be really clear on is the market for what you're doing, despite being maybe very skilled at it and having an appeal to a niche audience, is the product you're going to produce, is where you're going to put your time, a large enough opportunity that it is likely with a lot of room for error to yield you back what you're looking for. If you say, hey, I want this to be something that can grow to $1 million in annual revenue, I want to have this type of income for myself, I want to have this size of this many team members, really think through, and you may know that market if you're very good at it better than I, really think through what your likelihood of, I guess, getting to the audience that you're wanting, how likely is that? Is it big enough that the demand could get you to $1 million, right? That's what you have to answer. Is it big enough if you found yourself really impassioned in wanting to serve more people, bring on more team members, produce more lines of this product or service? Can it support that? If you get to that level and you say, hey, boy, I feel confident, my leadership, management, my operation skills, my everything skills, I feel I can stretch myself. Is the market opportunity big enough to justify going after? Okay, so really be clear, does the market opportunity meet your end objective if you're really looking at it in I think in a quantifiable way? How many people want what you're doing? Is there already someone doing this where you can kind of get a sense of the market size? Is it likely you can capture a big enough part of the market and in a sustainable way, which we'll get to in another part of the conversation here? But is what you're aiming for big enough to do what you want, right? Not big enough that you can maybe create a multi-billion-dollar company, since we're just talking about getting to $1 million, but can you likely get to $1 million, maybe a little bit more, aiming down the pathway that you're looking at? A compelling value proposition, right? This might seem obvious. We'll look at maybe something that's more of a commodity. And again, I know nothing about this space, but I'm just, I see things like this: yogurt shops or ice cream places in a neighborhood, right? It feels like there are so many of these places, and they all have different approaches, right? I don't know. I'm not personally that big into ice cream, but what makes it, when there's a lot of competition, when it's a somewhat commoditized space, what makes what you're doing so compelling that people will say, hey, yeah, forget that person down the street. I want this one. What are you doing that makes what you're offering special? How do you stand out from the crowd, right? First, is the audience big enough to help you reach the goals that you want to reach? And when you're serving that audience that you've kind of designated as your market, what's going to make you stand out? What Seth Godin has this really good thought process about being a purple cow, right? If you drive through a rural area, you're going to see cows that are all black, black or white with black spots. But what if you're a purple cow? Wouldn't that stand out in all these commodities? So, like, what is so compelling about what you're doing that people just absolutely say, yes, going to this place, that's exactly what I want, and no one else is doing this, or they do this so much better, or this place serves this and this, but this one serves only these two. But oh wow, those are the two best versions of whatever that is that I've ever experienced, right? I think for my business, where we deliver education and mental health services, right, we try to operate in a much more expeditious and personalized way than some of our competitors. And we serve primarily an adult population, where other competitors are often overbooked, taking a very kind of large scale, non-personalized approach. We try to do everything very quickly in a very personalized way, and just make things more like what I'll call a family approach, a common sense family approach. So don't worry about inventing something that's so elaborate, like a new decentralized technology with a specialized code that can be patented, or it's just so much different than anything we've ever seen before. Your compelling value proposition is you can just be the best at a very narrow objective, or a very narrow set of a couple things. Your value proposition can also be the speed in which you do something, the cost in which you do something. As long as you can make yourself stand out, you stand a very high chance of being around for a long time, because you're solving a very unique need in a way that the market demands. Okay, a great management team. Some of you might be saying, hey, I'm just at the beginning stages of this, a management team. Come on, I'm by myself doing everything. There's no manager here. I'm either in the business by myself, or I'm in the business with one team member or a couple contractors. I don't have a team. Okay. So I hear that. Okay. If you want to get to even the $1 million revenue mark, as the business operator, as the founder, as however you became in charge of the business, the tone that you set, the people that you've hired, whether they're contractors or employees, that culture, and it is one, who you've hired, how they're treated, the procedures they do or don't follow, is the groundwork for you to hand off to the next person. So what I would encourage when we're saying great management team, it doesn't mean that you have a management team right now, but just know that the actions you're taking, the people that you're working with, even if you're not working with anybody, the way you're working, the way you're operating, the lack of structure in the task you're performing on a daily basis, or the structure in which you're performing the task, or maybe the lack thereof that you're performing the task, is the foundation as the organization grows for how team members will operate, and eventually management team members. So a great management team is not something you get, I don't know. It's not something that you just kind of pull out of thin air. Your current habits, the current way you do business, is most certainly the foundation for your management team in the future. And if you have a management team, or if you have other managers you're working with, great or not great, here's how I would define a great management team. There is a cohesive vision. There's a cohesive strategy that the founder and operator of that business imparts to them, and they manage over a variety of parts of the organization using that strategy, using that vision. Like, you don't have to do everything. You can impart that, and they can repeat back to outside folks. The team members can repeat back what they're being told. There's cohesion there. And that does not happen accidentally, okay? To have a great management team does not mean you need one today. It means that the habits that you're building, the way you're working personally, the way anybody involved with your operation is working, there's cohesion to it. There's predictability to it to a large degree. You're operating in a way that can be handed to a next person, whether it's a team member or manager, and it can be either offloaded to them or developed on top of by them because there is a rhyme and reason to it. So great management does not start when you actually hire a manager. It starts long before that in terms of the habits you're building and who you're working with, even before you need a manager. A great sign, and I think I maybe mentioned this in other content, you're likely going to be the first manager of the organization, whether you want to or not. Sorry. Yeah, you own it. That onus starts and stops with you. The really wonderful thing that could happen in an ideal world is you bring in 10 team members. Again, contractors, employees, doesn't really matter. But you've set the foundation for what attributes those people you're working with have. You set the tone for how they are managed, the meeting cadence, expectations in terms of like both how they'll align with values and how they'll perform from key performance indicators level, how they'll qualitatively and quantitatively perform, right? You've imparted that, and one of the first 10 to 12 people that you brought aboard learns your system so well that you can make another division, or they can take a certain amount of responsibilities that you initially have off your responsibility list and carry on those kind of traditions that you've laid. That is a great management team, or that's one of the ways to build a great management team. So what I want to impart here, what David Thompson's book talks about, is if you want to scale into large millions and millions, billions of dollars of revenue, a great management team has to be present. But what I'll share with you on this 0 to 1 million journey is, before I had managers working with me, I had to work with our team members in a very specific way that I was able to teach to our managers. And then our managers worked with our team members in a certain way. And I was able to then bring in more of a senior leadership team to oversee those managers that oversee the frontline team workers. And it was what I'll call a DNA transfer. So just know what you're doing now has to be something that is predictable enough and understood well enough by yourself that it can be imparted to others down the line. A scalable business model, okay? Again, figuring out, okay, let's talk about, like, I hear people say scale, and I think that it's like, there's so many different ways people define this, and I think that that's fine, right? Scale, taking something from small to large, right? But like, what is scaling it? Okay, scaling is not just adding team members to your business. It's not just adding clients to your business. That's like a part of it, right? That's growth. I think that could be defined as growth, just adding more of something, more locations, more people, more sales, more of this, more of that. Does that mean that you're scaling the business? Certainly could. I hope for you financially that equals. But scale is being able to grow the business, add more people, add more customers, add more locations, add more of a footprint, add more geographical reach, whatever it is, add. But it's adding it at an efficiency level. pardon me, you have financial scale. Your cost of doing business can increase at a rate lesser than the income that you're generating by operating the business. Okay. Some people will use media and technology as an example. You might spend a large quantity of money creating a film, right? That, let's say that film then is sold to Netflix or Apple TV or I don't know, Hulu. Name one of the streaming platforms that has movies. And I'm sure people will be making fun of me that some of those platforms don't even have original content that they buy, but let's just pretend they do and you made a movie. There's a large cost up front to create that content or to make that movie. But there's not really a large ongoing cost once it's been distributed to replay time and time again, right? So the scale on that can be quite large. It can be consumed by millions and billions of families around the world, or eyeballs around the world, humans around the world. And your costs don't get perpetually larger as that piece of content goes out, okay? Same thing with a piece of software. And I know there are software companies that basically are making perpetual updates and feature updates and all this stuff, and that is adding costs. But once you write a piece of software and the foundation, the kind of bulk of the features are created, you're not taking on massive costs usually. And again, it's not like a space I know exceptionally well, but I think just by and large, you're not adding immense costs to add on features periodically, right? Those businesses scale. The media and the software stuff has tremendous scale because it can reach a tremendous amount of users, okay? And to make the product better or to just basically have the product used more doesn't take this exponential growth in terms of effort to make it more competitive, okay? That is real scale. When your business cost, when the cost of operations does not increase at the same rate as the income you're able to generate. So basically, you're making more money than it costs to grow the business. That's scaling. You really want to think about this carefully because efficiency counts. Let's go back to what I was talking about, and I'm not making fun of this. Again, I wish I had skills like this. I'm just pointing out something that's probably pretty niche. Okay, let's say you're very good at sewing and you make these products, you use a needle and thread and you're able to sew something together that, I don't know, your friends and family have said are terrific and that they would buy it if it was available for sale. You're using a lot of your own personal time. You're likely buying materials in small quantities to begin, right? Hence probably why people like it. It's very, I don't know, it's very custom. It's very ornate. It has a lot of qualities. It probably has a lot of, it probably has just a lot of unique art value since it's being done by a person versus a machine versus a large entity. And people may relate to the handcrafted quality, okay? Makes total sense. As your business model, as the demand grows, it may be hard to scale this company. Not impossible, just hard. And this is why we have to think through these stages depending on how great our ambitions are long term, not to just reach a set goal. If your goal is $1 million, maybe you don't have to think about these processes as hard of scaling. But let's play through this for a moment. I'm operating something that requires initially myself to know how to do this needle and thread thing that creates this very niche, I'm sorry, not niche, I apologize, this very handcrafted product. So I'm doing the work, I'm buying materials in small quantities. It takes me a long time to even produce one of these goods, okay? If I take this and I go to a local business fair or farmer's market or wherever, and people love it, I sell all 5 units or all 5 of these goods that I was able to make. And then I look on Etsy where I posted this and there's 5 more orders. Ooh, I might be in trouble. I've got a really good dilemma. There's a lot of demand and a very difficult product in terms of time and materials to fulfill, but scaling that and keeping that what we'll call handcrafted appeal may be very difficult. Maybe that's not important to the consumer, but if that really resonates strongly with you and your time is limited and the material costs are great and there's a lot of barriers to scaling it, you may have to, I guess, come to grips with, I either do this different, I hire more people that know how to do this, I raise my prices, etc. You may be able to scale the business model. I'm not saying you couldn't. I certainly definitely never tried to be a know-it-all. Maybe somebody can jump in and say, yeah, I had a business just like this and I was able to scale it no problem, and the cost structure made sense, etc. I guess what I'm getting at is, will just through you mapping it out, you taking this journey in your own mind, you thinking through different scenarios, can the present way you're going about things grow? If the present way you're going about things can grow, can it grow in a cost-effective manner? If you had to replace yourself with another person and pay them to do the work, and if you had to order more materials up front, will that added cost, will that added complication still allow you to make income that beats out the operating costs as you do more and more and more? If you're seeing a great relationship between the cost of doing business and the amount of sales you can generate, you can grow and scale efficiently. If you're thinking of a bunch of complications, yeah, man, we're going to need a much larger facility and a 3-year lease and this type of machinery and 10,000 workers. I don't know, might be a much more difficult path to scaling. So just be very cognizant that a scalable business model isn't just what I'll call growth for the sake of growth. It's growing on all the different fronts you can grow, the amount of personnel you have, the amount of geography that you serve, the amount of customers that you have, making more revenue, but it's also making sure that there's a cost factor that's different. Your growth that basically is cheap versus the operating cost, or cheaper than the operating cost that it takes to get there. You're making more money than you're spending as you build it. A proven business model, okay? It doesn't mean that the business that you're doing can't be original, right? Like, obviously, internet advertising has been out there before Google, but the Google AdWords, like searching for a topic on the internet and then having related ads be kind of integrated into that search, was a new thing where, again, it probably wasn't brand new. I'm sure that there was another model like it with one of the other search engines or on some other site, but it was a fairly innovative thing. The thing that made it, it was an unproven at first, but the proof came shortly after it was rolled out. Like, wow, this is here, this is solid. I think there's a difference between just like, tried and true, like you have years and years of history of other business practitioners doing it. To me, like, that's obviously good proof. You know it before it exists. But when you bring your business model to market the way you're doing it, and it holds up, like it's harder to copy, like you have months and months and months of like either sustained or growing growth using it. To me, the proof is the way you're uniquely rolling out the way you make money, and the market shows you that they want it, and the income you're generating is either consistent or growing. Unproven business model, or maybe just a flat out bad business model, is one where you're getting no traction, or it starts out at one level and you're seeing decline and you're seeing steady decline. So you want your business model to be pretty bulletproof, hard to copy, shows you repeatedly month after month that it's going to be at a consistent level. You're confident that as you add more sales, it's actually making you more income for your business. Proven doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking something that has been done 100 times the same way and just doing it that exact same way. Not bad. I think a lot of businesses do that and do it well. But I think just the proven means that you can go to market. It's not just a piece of paper guess, like where, you're typing something into Notion or Evernote or whatever, and you just think that it's going to work. You actually see that it works and it's sustainable and it keeps producing the same, if not better, result for, pretty substantial amount of time. Operating leverage. I think very similar to scale, that when you get to a certain part of your business operation, you have, I guess, a really great advantage. I'm going to give you an example for, in our industry, mental health. Once we get once we get the licenses to do perform the services that we perform, once we get the clinical team members that need to be a part of the operation, we start to have operating leverage because the licensing is quite expensive. Getting the right team members involved can be quite expensive. For an individual practitioner that could maybe perform some of the services on their own, they might say, yeah, I could do this, but this operation, they've got the billing down and they've got the procedures down and they've got the marketing down. They've kind of got all these ways of doing business tight, where I can just kind of plug in and start building my own income, right? Once you get to a level where you have enough utility, and I'll explain what I mean by this. Your sales system, your marketing system, your accounting system, your compliance system, whatever systems are involved in your business, and I'm alluding to a little bit of our business. Once those are down and down pat, you kind of have this, I'm going to say you have this center, right? You have this, whether it's virtual or brick and mortar, you have this center of business that's pretty strong. We're adding and plugging in team members, plugging in new lines of business might not be very hard. Like, you have an advantage. You have, I'm going to use the term, an infrastructure. You have the utilities. Think about a house, right? When you have your house, to add a washer and dryer, if you already had kind of the utility, and it's just like, okay, you purchased, you set it there, and you plug it into the wall, and it's rolling. Right, to add more and more on, like when you have the infrastructure there for certain things, it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier to grow because you have kind of the foundation to do it. So when you're thinking about your business, if you start to build out components of the operation, you might start thoroughly. Okay, if you have a really good accounting department, if you have a really good legal department, if you have a really good X, Y, and Z, it is going to make it easier for you to add people at a rapid pace because you have all the procedures thought through of doing it. You can just move through and do new things quite quickly because you have the people and expertise to add those in without a lot of strain and effort. So just make sure, I think operating leverage comes from having really good repeatable systems. And people, obviously, this is going to be super key and very obvious, but people that are very good at those systems too. So make sure that you're thinking about, when you're bringing people on and when you're thinking about your systems, does this person know this kind of forward and backward? And is what they're doing giving us an advantage? Because like when we have this marketing person in this way of doing business, does it make that, does that, I'm going to say play nicely? Does that play nicely if we add a salesperson and they're doing this? Like, do all your different facets of the business play nicely together? And once you get those pieces kind of click together like Lego blocks, you're going to have an operational advantage because you will have all the infrastructure in-house necessary to make decisions quickly and confidently. here's the final thing. And again, credit to David G. Thompson with this 7 essentials of growth or for high growth. Sustainable competitive advantage. Okay. Make sure what you're doing isn't so commoditized that a competitor can just replicate what you do and put you out of business without tremendous effort. Okay. Again, we can go back to this, I don't know, this small thing that a person could sew. Let's say, again, you're great with a needle and thread. You are able to make this good by hand that everybody wants. Is what you're doing unique enough that if somebody else is really good at sewing and making this particular handcrafted good, that they couldn't do exactly what you're doing, but much better, much cheaper, much faster? Just make sure that whatever you're doing, you have a reasonable, some people call it a moat, right? Like that body of water that goes around a castle where you need a drawbridge to come down the crossover. Make sure that you have a moat around your way of doing business that's decent enough that it will deter competitors from entering and doing exactly what you're doing. Also, as part of the sustainable competitive advantage, make sure you can work quickly enough, because humans are designed not to think everything is good. They get a few key things locked in their mind. I think Jack Welch, and I just heard this yesterday, had this thought process with General Electric that said, if we're not 1 or 2 in our industry, we're going to get out. And while that seems maybe pretty intense or pretty, like that's really thinking from a competitive standpoint, I think the overarching point when I look at that is human beings are fickle. They don't want 10,000 options. They might say that they want 10,000 options, but they're going to use the same 1 or 2 things. They're going to use the same 1 or 2 toothpaste brands in their life, the same 1 or 2 types of coffee in their life. Not saying that they won't deviate out of that, but it's like people that say they want variety. And I think on a large scale, that's probably true. On a product level, there's like 1 or 2 things people think of when they're thinking about the brand for the most part. Make sure that in your mind, for the niche and for the industry that you're getting in, can you be 1 or 2? And do you think you can sustain that position in people's mind and in their choice for a long time? Okay, we don't want to probably make a business that only lasts a year. It's a lot of work to put one of these things together. So just make sure what you're doing is going to be, I'm going to use another term for a book. And again, I'm not going to take credit with this saying, but make sure what you're doing is built to last. I think that's a Jim Collins book. So not taking credit for that saying either. But just make sure it's going to be a lot of time, effort, and commitment on your part, that you've thought through why you have a sustainable competitive advantage. Okay. These are the 7 essentials. Again, not my work, but David Thompson. There will be a link in the description for the book. It's, I think, a really helpful framework, even if you're not looking to make a mega high growth company doing, really large revenue. Even as you're starting that 0 to 1 million journey, make sure you've thought about, discuss it with a colleague of yours, discuss it with somebody that runs a business. Whatever you're working on, see how well in your own mind, score it on a scale yourself. 0 to 5, how good are we in this box? 0 to 5, how good are we in this box? Make sure that you've thought about these 7 ideas, because even as you're developing the smaller business, right, the 0 to $1 million business, make sure that you've thought through these things so it can last a long time. And so you have, and again, this is something I touched on earlier, so you have the option to make it bigger if you so choose, right? Options are important in life. All right. Well, I hope that this has been helpful. I really enjoy having the opportunity to share these thoughts with all of you. Until next time, be healthy and well, and I will see you on the next episode of 0 to 1 million. Thanks so much.